Hey, welcome. This is the last video in my series of descriptions of the various cognitive functions. And what these are just sort of short and, well, somewhat short. It's really hard for me to be concise and short, but I think you get it. But, anyways, they're intended to be short summaries of the various functions and what I think they are doing and how and the role that they play in the different personalities. Um, and I did have an intro video. If this is the first one you're watching, there is an intro video out there that gets into sort of the caveats and assumptions and nuances about these videos. And I invite you to watch that just so that I don't have to get into it with every video. But all that being said, this is the one on extroverted intuition. And if you've watched any of the other videos, again, I think introverted intuition and extroverted intuition are just very hard to pin down with a sort of verbal description of what they are. Um, and I think there's a lot of overlap in some weird way of trying to, or let's just put it this way, it's very hard to parse out what's introverted intuition versus what's extroverted intuition. And it's also hard to think of it as, focused towards the outside world versus focused to the inside world because it's kind of all over the place, right? Some of it's internal, some of it's external. And so thinking of it as extroverted versus introverted or external versus internal is hard to do, and it gets you in these weird sort of cognitive loops, trying to parse it out. But okay, so enough hand waving on it. What is extroverted intuition? So I think at its core, extroverted intuition is coming up with ideas, exploring ideas in the sort of metaphysical space. And a lot of it, and so metaphysical is, by and large, the verbal domain. And coming up with ideas in sort of the verbal space, I guess. Where let's see here, so where introverted intuition is sort of coming up with sort of a representation of what I think things are, the pattern that I see, reading in between the lines and coming up with some sort of knowledge about the world that isn't based off of direct experience. Extroverted intuition is sort of taking that in forward in time and sort of thinking about all the different possibilities and all the different things that could happen given a certain set of circumstances. So in my introverted intuition video, and again, this is how the two concepts get a little fuzzy. In my introverted intuition video, I talked about how the brain is using intuition to sort of figure out, okay, how are things going to unfold here? If I bring a gun accidentally into a bank and pull it out of my jacket, what's going to happen, right? In some respects, that could be extroverted intuition, but I think at its core, that's more of an introverted intuition because I think we all sort of agree that, the essence of what's going to happen, right? We might not fully, we might not think of, how each step in the process or, each person in the process is going to react, and how the actual events unfold. But we know generally, we have a general sense that something bad's going to probably happen. And this is probably going to play out in a certain way. And so you come up with this sort of knowledge or representation of the world that's sort of conscripted or confined in one way using your introverted intuition. Your extroverted intuition is more expansive. So if I told you, okay, guy walks into a bank, pulls out a gun, give me 5 different scenarios that could happen, given this situation. An extroverted intuition is going to think of all 5 of those different things, different possibilities, different, universes in the multiverse, right? That are going to happen, right? Given the probabilities and given the odds, right? And then could also think of things that are not likely to happen, but could happen, right? It could very well be that it was some sort of bank in Montana, and today was bring your gun to the bank day. And you could pull out your gun, and everybody starts applauding and says, "Man, that's a nice gun," and you did it purely on accident, right? Now, that coming up with that scenario is extroverted intuition, right? It's different from introverted intuition because, when I came up with my, pulling your gun out of your jacket at a bank example, everybody's introverted intuition probably was like, oh shit, something bad is going to unfold, right? Even though I've never directly experienced it, I can just sort of tell in my mind's eye, something's probably going to happen. But using extroverted intuition, you can think of a whole other universe, right? Where maybe, what your introverted intuition was telling you is going to happen doesn't necessarily happen, right? And so, one way I've seen it described is introverted intuition is taking information and funneling it in to something that we, some sort of representation that we know is true, but we never actually experienced it. Where extroverted intuition is sort of taking information and sending it out of the funnel, and it's just sort of spreading in all the different areas that it could be. And so introverted intuitives tend to sort of come up with what they think is sort of the reasonable representation of the world. This is how the world really works, right? This is what politicians are really doing. This is what judges are really doing behind the scenes. Things that we haven't directly experienced, but if you add up all the if you add up 2 and 2, or read between the lines, you're going to come to the same conclusion, right? Where extroverted intuition is more about, well, let's explore all the possible conclusions that we could get out of this situation. And it's not trying to find that it's not trying to funnel the information into a universal truth. It's actually trying to do the opposite and think about, okay, it could be this, it could be that. Yeah, you're, the person using introverted intuition who, is dead set sure that this is what's going to happen. Yeah, there's probably a 95% chance of that happening, but there's a 5% chance of all this other stuff happening, right? And that's what the extroverted intuition is doing. But it's doing it again in sort of the metaphysical world, in the sense of describing events, describing how things could play out. But you also see extroverted intuition, they're very good talkers. They'll just talk a mile a minute, and they have no problem jumping from idea to idea, and they'll keep up with you, they'll keep up with you if you're jumping around idea to idea like I'm kind of doing here, because this is all an exercise in NE, right? And so it's easy to in some ways to sort of pick up on them because they'll just talk a mile a minute, but they seem very fluid at doing it, from bouncing from idea to idea, without a whole lot of backtracking or reservations or inserting parentheticals or anything. They just go, and they're exploring that whole world. And um, so yeah, I mean, I guess when you're thinking about extroverted intuition, again, it's very hard to pin down, using a description, but it really is just think of that example of bringing a gun to a bank where 9.9 times out of 10 or 99% of the time your introverted intuition is going to tell you that's bad, that's not going to turn out very well. But your extroverted intuition can think of the 0.5% of other scenarios where it could actually be okay. Like, again, it could be you're in a bank and it's National Bring Your Gun to the Bank Day, or or the bank is having a promotion, bring your gun in and open up a checking account. or you could pull out your gun and the guy behind you was really intending to rob the bank, and then all of a sudden he realizes, oh, this guy's got a gun, I better get out of here, and you might have saved the day, by doing that mistake. And so the point being is that there's a lot of different universes in the multiverse, right? There's a lot of different things that could happen. And that is what your extroverted intuition is trying to do. And I mean, and if you really think about it, that's a really weird function, right? That, we as humans who are living in a relatively stable world can think of different possibilities and different things that could happen, probably aren't going to happen, but they could, right? And that's what makes a good movie or a good TV show, right? Where, they sort of guide you along and your introverted intuition is telling you, oh, this is going to happen, right? Even though you haven't experienced it, your introverted intuition is telling you, oh, yeah, this guy's totally the bad guy. But then your extrovert, but then they flip the script on you, or they, introduce some sort of plot twist or something, and they go in a totally different direction that was completely unexpected. Again, think Breaking Bad, think No Country for Old Men, that kind of thing, or Quentin Tarantino is like the master of this, right? He sort of brings you along a certain path, and your introverted intuition is like, oh, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, or oh, this is okay, and then boom, out of nowhere a gun goes off, or something like that, right? Totally unexpected, totally out there in the extroverted intuition world. I don't know if Quentin Tarantino is necessarily a dominant extroverted intuitive, but he probably is, right? Some sort of ENFP or ENTP, right? Because who else is going to come up with those crazy extroverted intuition types of plot twists and stuff like that? So, again, I am sort of just ad-libbing here, thinking off the cuff, but I guess after all, saying all that, I would just say extroverted intuition is about the plot twists, right? Finding the unexpected event or the unexpected way that something could unfold, right? And so, these are going to be your scientists or intellectuals that are going to have breakthrough discoveries, right? Where your introverted intuition types are, are probably going to be very good scientists, and they really understand how all this stuff ties together and how it all works. But they tend to sort of, become a slave to their pet theory, right? They just, they want their pet theory to be true. And so they might ignore the extroverted intuition part of it, because they're so married to their introverted intuition, and they want that universal true to be true, and they don't want anybody out there messing with that, right? So they might not make any big breakthrough discoveries, but they are going to be the people who sort of move the ball forward and find a way to sort of synthesize the data and come up with a way of thinking about it that sort of makes sense. Where the Einsteins and the Teslas of the world are just going to come up with something just like I don't even know if I put Einstein in there, but the Teslas of the world, the Tarantinos of the world, the people who are just like, hey, we're going to go on this totally different path. That's the extroverted intuition, kicking in. Okay, I hope that helps. I hope all of these videos help. But again, like I say in the intro, this is really just the way that I think about it. So in the other videos, if I'm talking about extroverted intuition, or I'm talking about introverted intuition or sensing or feeling or whatever, and you're just thinking like, wow, that's not how I heard extroverted feeling, or what extroverted feeling is, or how it works. This way you can sort of come back and be like, oh, okay, well, that's just the way he thinks about it. And it could be right, it could be wrong, I don't know. It's my introverted intuition, so it's my little pet theory, so I'm going to be married to it. But all you extroverted intuitive thinkers are going to have your own little, twists and turns on it, and that's cool. That's the discourse, right? That's how we get from point A to point B in all of this. So thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, cool.